Hello. Today I'm going to talk about Bell's palsy and PTSD and about a client who I helped release Bell's palsy from. So before the session, she contacted me and she left me a message. I'm reading off the report now. She said, I'm suffering Bell's palsy at the moment, so I'm pleased you have not called, as my speech is quite severely affected and I would not have answered the call. At first, we thought I was having a stroke. I was so scared. However, it's stress that's brought this about. My PTSD has been the greatest cause, with little bits adding to my mountain that I carry. I'm lucky it wasn't a stroke. Whilst I am on steroids, the doctor doesn't think that they will work, as the paralysis had already set in before he prescribed the medication. The doc has no idea how long it will last. I'm a little self-conscious as I have to physically blink my eye. My eye has to be taped down at night as it doesn't close. So the Bell's palsy affected her eye function. It also affected one of her eardrums, I think her hearing to a degree, and her tongue, and her face was sagging. So I think, as you've realized from this message that she sent me, she is a friend. And I hadn't heard from her for some time, so I contacted her and I said, what's up? I haven't heard from you for ages. And that's the response she sent me. So given how she was feeling, she agreed that she could do with some help, and she enrolled herself for some healing sessions with me. The first session we did, we released from her psychic trauma with 3 trapped emotions, which were panic, confusion, indecisiveness in the last 3 years, and an addictive heart energy, which was supported by heart walls of crying. And I found in my experience so far, and I'm always learning new things, and I may not say this in 6 months' time, but in my experience to date, I found that heart walls are always supporting addictive heart energies. And an addictive heart energy is an addiction to something inappropriate or something that causes us harm. It can be thought forms, it can be things we think about that we're addicted to, sort of feeling miserable or feeling unhappy or feeling like a failure. It can also be physical things, like we can be addicted to eating too much sugar or drinking alcohol or taking some form of recreational drugs. We can be addicted to exercise. We can be addicted to being sort of working too hard, just can't stop working too hard. So there's many things that contribute to these, or that these are sort of manifesting as behaviors. So she had crying, fear, betrayal, and dread, amongst other things, in this addictive heart energy. And there were some other things we released in this session. So she had feedback after the session, a day after the session. She said, today is the first day that my heart has not palpitated, and I have not had a panic attack. Last night, after your session, going to bed, I felt like I had dry ice under my skin. Not hot, just a very strange, icy feeling. When your report came through, the panic I felt was so great I could hardly lift my arms to read it. Once I started to read it, it all made sense. At each of the times in my life you had identified, big things happened to me. I cannot believe how you helped. So she had an almost immediate response the following day. Just to clarify that these sessions were done, I'm in one country, she lives in another country, and we did them remotely in all senses of the word. I didn't have a video call with her or any form of, we didn't do it over the telephone. We just did it based on the information she had texted me previously about her Bell's palsy and the PTSD. So then I found, on the 4th day after the session, she sent another feedback saying, I just wanted you to know that this is the 3rd day I have been panic-free, apart from a little panic where I'd forgotten where I parked my car, and even then the panic didn't rise and take over. No heart palpitations, no anxiety. I cannot actually believe it. I've even started to speak freely again. Odd for me after watching my guard after so many years. So this tells us that she didn't talk about her situation. She didn't share how she felt about things. She was very guarded with how much of herself she revealed. And also, in terms of the heart palpitations, this is interesting because when we release heart walls, often we find people lose their heart palpitations. Very often when a client comes to me and says, I have a band around my heart, or I feel like my heart is always palpitating and the doctor has said there's nothing wrong, then very often when we release heart walls, we find that this relieves the condition. So the next session, the second session, what we did was we released a post-traumatic physical trauma. A post-traumatic physical trauma is when we suffer some sort of physical harm or attack. It could be, I've seen them in people who've had operations. There's been a physical trauma to the site of the operation. I've seen them when people have broken a limb or something. There's been a trauma attached to that part of the leg or the arm or the wrist or whatever. It's any sort of physical trauma that we have experienced, and then we've absorbed the energy from that trauma, that assault to our bodies, and we've kept hold of that energy. So what was feeding, what happens is she had the trauma, but there were things that are feeding the trauma, which caused the trauma to embed and for her to keep the energy. And her post-traumatic physical trauma happened at 8 to 9. And I got that it was involving a man. There was a male figure involved here. This was supported by trapped emotions of fear, dread, horror, self-blame, and those were all at age 8 to 9, and they were all feeding this post-traumatic physical trauma, which we released. We released the emotions, and then we released the energy of the trauma. She had then a psychic trauma into which 5 trapped emotions had fed. So a psychic trauma is when we have some sort of traumatic event. It could be a bomb in the London Underground. It could be a divorce. It could be something happening to us. Psychic trauma is the kind of thing that you would see in a bomb scare or in a car accident or in some sort of emotional assault. And what she had one of these of 5 trapped emotions which were feeding into it. And so she experienced, at the time of the trauma, she experienced 5 emotions which she absorbed and sort of, because she absorbed them all at the same time, and as a result of what was happening to her, which was causing this trauma, she absorbed them as a ball, if you like to call it, a ball of energy, which she then lodged in her reproductive organs, in other words, her sexual organs. These emotions that she had were shock, unworthiness, shame, unworthy, humiliation. So these were all feeding into her psychic trauma and had supported her psychic trauma. And these were at age 7 to 8. She had an unhealthy negative cord, which were linking her reproductive organs to the reproductive organs of another. And this was placed by a man when she was 8 to 9. And there was no other cord released or asked to be cut. So I cut that cord, I released her from that cord. So an unhealthy cord is a cord that attaches us to someone else. And it's generally created by one person or the other, obviously. Not deliberately, not consciously, I don't think on a conscious level, but certainly on a sort of subconscious level. And they're not a healthy thing. A cord attaching us to someone else is very seldom a healthy thing. It's a sort of a flow of energy between 2 people. And this was created for her by a man at 8 to 9. She had a will to die, which she created at 8 to 9. Now, a will to die is something we create when we are very, very low, and we just simply do not have the will to live. In some of my clients, it has manifested as something where they've said, oh yes, that's when I started cutting myself, or that's when I tried to commit suicide. So she had a will to die, which she created at 8 to 9. And the reason that she created this was because she had trapped emotions of self-blame, of humiliation, of shock, which were all lodged in her reproductive organs. So we released all of those, and then we released the will to die. Then finally in this session, she had an imbalance in her root chakra in the physical. The physical root chakra is your reproductive organs. It was supported by trapped emotions of insecurity, horror, humiliation, depression, crying. These were all at 8 to 9, and they were all affecting her root chakra and causing it to spin in an unbalanced way. So we released all of those, and then we balanced the root chakra. Okay, so then she said, the week following the session, she sent me a report, not a report, she sent me an email or a text, I can't remember which it was. She said this week was awful, but yesterday I felt newer for the first time in a long time. Even my palsy is starting to release. So now this is probably about a month after she first contracted the bells, because we had 2 sessions and they probably were about, I would think they were about 2 or 3 weeks in between. I can't remember. Anyway, she said, I have a few furrows when I frown, which was a cause of celebration for her, because she felt almost like she'd had Botox in her forehead. Her forehead was unable to respond or move. I'm able to blink if I concentrate and my mouth doesn't droop so much. Isn't that wonderful that she is now noticing physical changes in her Bell's palsy and how she's looking to others and to herself? I think it's just amazing. She says here, you spoke about detached emotions, and this morning when I spoke to a family member about the trauma and the thing that happened, I was detached. I had a few tears, but I was quite matter of fact. So what I spoke to her about detached emotions, I went in my report and in the email that followed it, I said to her, I'm hoping that this session helps you to detach. And what I meant by that was that this work seems to do something to brain plasticity. I have no evidence. I have no scientific evidence. All I have to support my statement there is that so many of my clients have reported this to me. They experience, after healing, after emotional and body code healing, they experience a sense of detachment from the event. So typically now she is saying, I'm detaching from the event. So she could still see the event and she could still remember the event and sort of picture herself as being the little girl that this event was happening for. But she was able to almost sit on the windowsill and look in and not have that attachment to the event. So now when she's remembering the event, she's not having that upwelling of fear and anxiety and anger and humiliation and, you know, all those awful emotions that she used to remember every time she thought about the event. Because I don't know if you agree with me, but certainly I believe that we are never properly healed until we can remember the event and it doesn't cause us pain. Because otherwise, every time we remember the event, we have the emotions that were associated with the event at the time, and they are able to very quickly come back to the surface. We are able to almost relive that event without any effort whatsoever. That is now not happening for her to the degree that it was previously. 3 weeks after the second session, the final session, the second session, my anxiety levels come and go. One thing I can say is that my heart has only palpitated once in the last 3 weeks. I think anxiety is not the word, rather it is now worry. Some days I feel like I can conquer the world and then I slip back into my comfort zone, remembering the event and telling herself how useless she was and how completely worthy she was of being hurt in this way, which I think is what happens to us when we're abused. We believe somehow it's our fault. However, that said, I cannot believe how much lighter I feel after my biggest burden was released. I am very detached from it and don't have it hanging over my head constantly. Then finally, 4 weeks after the session, she says, my Bell's palsy is doing well. My tongue is still numb and my eardrum is still paralyzed, but my face is nearly back to normal. How fabulous for her. Isn't that just wonderful? I stopped taking the steroids as they had no effect at all. While my face now looks okay, the ear and tongue may take about 6 to 10 months. I cope with it and it's not a huge problem. I don't worry about it much as I am just so grateful I can blink. So I think that puts in perspective, doesn't it, how lucky we are when we're in a normal state. I don't think we kind of realize until we become in a state that's not normal how much we take for granted our health and our well-being. So that was a marvelous experience for me. I felt extremely lucky and blessed to be able to facilitate this healing for her. I can't tell you how much it meant to me. You know, she is a friend, and I think even if she hadn't been a friend, I think that anyone who has suffered from abuse deserves a chance of recovery. I really do. I believe that all of us deserve to be well and to be happy and to be able to put this behind us and not to blame ourselves. So if you have any condition of a traumatic nature that you think you would like help with, if you would like something released, please, I urge you to contact me. I really do. I would be so privileged and honored to help you and to give you the kind of help that I believe you deserve. I hope you believe it too, because I think very often with these awful things that happen, we believe that we're not worthy of the help. I'm reminding you that you are completely worthy and completely deserving of being helped. Please don't let it get to a place where your body has some sort of affliction, and because you're just carrying so much stress and trauma. So I send you on your way with love and light. I wish you well. Bye-bye.